Welcome everyone to the 132nd Celebrity Synastry chart reading, where we will be looking into Gracie Abrams and Paul Mescal. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Adeline and it is so nice to meet you. On this channel, I look at the dynamic between two celebrities using astrology. For those new and returning, I take notes on a Synastry chart looking at the personal planet signs aspects and if birth times are available, house overlays. I share these notes and add my extra insights and interpretations along the way. So if that sounds good to you, subscribe and click the bell to join us weekly, and let's get right into this one. Starting off with the sun, we have Gracie's sun in Virgo and Paul's sun in Aquarius. It's mentally harmonious and they're a good intellectual team. Paul helps Gracie to be more open-minded and Gracie brings structure to Paul's life. Paul's sun overlaid in Gracie's third house. There's a comfortable atmosphere and Paul thinks that Gracie is brilliant, which does, go back to, we're just in the beginning, but like the whole mentally harmonious intellectual thing, I assume Gracie may be the one that is bringing more of that to the table. They enjoy talking about their days and Gracie feels smarter around Paul. Paul thinks that Gracie is predictable and Paul sees Gracie as someone with good common sense. Gracie's sun trine Paul's Mercury. It's a great friendship and they have good communication. Gracie accepts Paul this is only just the beginning, we're touching this, but from the impression I'm getting so far, it seems like Gracie's kind of undertaking Paul under his wing. I don't know why I'm seeing that sort of like image, like, a wing, someone going under someone's wing. And, she seems to be the one that is a bit more like assertive in terms of like she's like bringing a lot to the table and she's making the table and everything. So I wonder where we'll go from here, but I just wanted to point that out before we go any further. They both just get each other and they do business together well. I know he's an actor. I'm pretty sure she's an actor. I think she's J.J. Abrams' daughter. So I assume she's in the whole acting sphere as well. So I wonder if they've done any movies together yet or anything like that. Gracie supports Paul's beliefs and they can talk for issues together. Gracie feels she can think better around Paul, which going back to how she feels smarter around him. Gracie gets what makes Paul tick and Gracie admires Paul's intelligence. They understand each other on a basic level and they speak to each other with understanding. Gracie allows Paul to express himself. Gracie's sun opposite Paul's Venus. Their values conflict and they frustrate each other. Paul grows to resent Gracie. I assume this would be in terms of like if she is constantly like, acting smarter around him and everything. Like that would be, I don't feel like that would be a great feeling to be in a relationship with someone like that, where they're constantly like, I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you and everything. So I wonder if it's just got to do with that. Maybe we'll see more as well. Paul sees Gracie as too dictatorial. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. Paul can play games with Gracie and Gracie needs to learn to accept Paul, which we did see that she appreciates his intelligence. I think probably just accepting him as an equal. Hard work is needed to make this work and Gracie will either not appreciate Paul or take him for granted. I want to save my judgment for later until we see more, because like so far it genuinely seems like it's someone she's like taking upon like as like a sort of under her wing in a way. Paul's sun opposite Gracie's moon. There's a stronger mutual attraction and their differences attract them. They're both drawn to the relationship and Gracie may find Paul overbearing. Okay, I mean, it's never on its own, it's not the best, but I'm glad it's balancing up a bit. Paul may find Gracie too dependent. I wonder in what way, because so far it seems like it's the other way around, Gracie being a bit too hyper independent and being on her own here. So I wonder if we'll see a bit more in maybe an area she's a bit more dependent. Paul's sun opposite Gracie's Venus. This is a repeated aspect, just inverted, so everything from before is further emphasized, but also Gracie grows to resent Paul and Paul needs to learn to accept Gracie. Gracie sees Paul as too dictatorial and Gracie can play games with Paul. Okay, so he seems to have his own area where he's a bit more like on his own. So I'm very curious as to it, because it seems like for Gracie it's a bit more of like an intelligence practical thing. Paul will either not appreciate Gracie or take her for granted. I also want to wait and see where we go with this, because on his end, I feel like there's definitely more to like appreciate, take for granted, because it seems like she's helping him, bringing him under her wing and everything. Paul's sun is square Gracie's Saturn. Gracie sacrifices her freedom, and Paul is sensitive to criticism. They both attempt to support each other, and Paul may outgrow Gracie. It would be kind of sad because potentially, like, Gracie, like, being J.J. Abrams' daughter, I assume she would have a unique insight to the industry and everything. So I wonder if maybe she helped Paul with that. Like, oh, you could see this from, like, I don't know, a director's point of view or something like that. With J.J. Abrams and everything. So I wonder if he kind of, like, took the knowledge and in a way used it to outgrow Gracie, because, with no offense to Gracie, but, I feel like Paul Mescal is a bit more like of a known name now. Gracie Abrams, I just know her as like J.J. Abrams' daughter, not really like an actress in her own right. So that would really suck and would show that he kind of took her help for granted. They both feel mature, and Gracie tends to be too critical of Paul. Paul feels blocked and discouraged by Gracie, and Paul sees Gracie as all the traditions he wants to come. I wonder in what way. They both need to really want this relationship to work, which we did see how hard work is needed to make this work. So this is a very, I don't want to say tenuous relationship, but like this relationship needs a lot more watering than others, you could say. Paul's sun conjunct Gracie's Uranus. They meet each other suddenly, so potentially maybe they did meet on set together, maybe they were doing some business together, but that's them. They're separated at key moments, and they need to embrace spontaneity. I mean, particularly with their careers, obviously they're going to be traveling around doing various projects and everything. They're obviously going to be separated at some points more than others, maybe. Paul wants more stability, and it's a relationship outside of tradition, which seems like something Paul would be more instigating. Paul is willing to support Gracie's desires, and they both met when they were looking for something different. Paul triggers Gracie to explore her individuality, and Paul is attracted to Gracie's unconventional qualities. Gracie challenges Paul to be more unconventional. Now for the intermission. This video is brought to you by me, my Etsy store, Adeline the Astrologer. If you ever watch this and think, hey, I would like her to read my Synastry chart, well, I will. I do personalized Synastry readings on my Etsy store, both basic and detailed. The basic one is very simple to understand. It's not overwhelming at all. It's pretty good for those that are beginners to astrology, just getting the head around astrology, or just as a fun gift idea. The detailed one is just like what I do on my channel, just a lot of insight and interpretation on your chart. So if you are interested in that and everything else astrology and tarot related, readings and gifts, then definitely check out my Etsy store. Links are below. I'm always releasing new things, so definitely check it out if you're interested. You can even just favorite the store just to show your support for free. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to the reading. So now it's time for moon. We have Gracie's moon in Leo and Paul's moon in Cancer. They're protective of the other. It seems like they are in their own way. Gracie appreciates Paul, and Paul is supportive of Gracie. They have different emotional natures, and Paul boosts Gracie's ego. Yeah, in terms of like intelligence and all of that, he seems to really do that for her. Gracie can be sometimes too much for Paul, okay? The only way we've really seen this is like he sees her as a bit more on the dictatorial side, so that is there. Paul's moon overlaid in Gracie's 9th house. Paul idolizes Gracie, and Paul brings out the best in Gracie, which this will be going back to. We did just see that he encourages her to be like more herself and everything, and it allows her to express herself, which is nice. Paul feels like Gracie is out of his league, and there's a possibility for long distance. Again, with the whole acting thing, Gracie may become emotionally attached to Paul, and Gracie may become dependent on Paul. Okay, so this is where she's a bit more attached and dependent on in an emotional way. They share similar attitudes on politics and religion, and there's mutual respect, admiration, and affection. Gracie's moon opposite Paul's Mars. It's an emotional roller coaster, and Gracie finds Paul to be aggressive. In what way? That's what worries me. Paul finds Gracie to be demanding. I assume this would be more in an emotional sense again. They both get defensive, and they both react instinctually to each other. That's not great. We took a very dark turn just now. Codependency is likely to occur. Yeah, it seems like in different ways though. Like it seems like Gracie is relying on Paul for like emotional support, But with Paul, it seems like he's relying on Gracie for like intellectual and practical support. Gracie wants commitment with Paul. I'm not obsessed with where this is going, because it seems like that is weird. Not weird, but like considering what we have seen, where it seems like Gracie's more interested in an emotional connection. Paul seems to be really into like Gracie, like her intelligence and what she can like bring practically to him. We haven't really seen anything too clear, because those aspects and overlays do come up where it's like, gosh, this really is a business relationship. Someone is using someone, which we haven't really seen here. But at the same time, you can't really ignore it. It seems like Paul is really like, admiring Gracie, putting her on a pedestal of like brilliance and everything. Paul's moon is sextile Gracie's Saturn. Gracie feels Paul is committed to her, which we did say he wants stability. It just seems like the motives are very contrasting and not in the best ways. Gracie is accountable to Paul, and it's not a shallow relationship. Gracie provides practical help, we're seeing again. So now it's time for Mercury. We have Gracie's Mercury in Virgo and Paul's Mercury in Capricorn. These are both earth signs. They prioritize practical daily matters and they accomplish goals together. The relationship can get stale easily, and they both tend to neglect the relationship. I feel like this will be in terms of like, we've already seen a couple times like long distance separation occurring thing. I feel like that's where they would neglect it. Paul's Mercury overlaid in Gracie's third house. Paul is more chatty around Gracie, and Paul enjoys long conversations with Gracie. Gracie will enjoy conversations with Paul, which like, they do have like a bit of like niceness here. It's just the motives for why they're here is a bit questionable. The Mercury signs are Trine together, so there's easy communication and they solve problems similarly. They enjoy learning from each other and there's mutual understanding. So it's nice that they seem to appreciate the growth here. Like, it obviously depends on what we'll see later, but it seems like, if they didn't things, like they would see it as a relationship of growth, They have complementary ideas and thoughts, and they hold similar views. Misunderstandings are unlikely, which in some ways, yes, I feel like, are their motives a misunderstanding necessarily, or just, just the omitted lie, really? Paul's Mercury trine Gracie's Saturn. They work well together and they think in similar strategic ways. Paul appreciates Gracie's mature thinking and sense of purpose. Gracie helps Paul bring structure to his life. This is a weird thing we keep seeing repeated. I don't, like, at the top of my head, I don't think I've ever read someone where, like, it kept bringing up that one person is specifically bringing a lot of structure to someone else's life. Paul feels he can learn a lot from Gracie. Yeah, it's, I don't know how to feel about it. It's there, though. There's effective communication, and they solve problems together carefully and logically. They have serious conversations, and it's a long-term karmic relationship. I'm not sure how long they have been together, or if they're even together in the first place now. I'm pretty sure they are still a thing. But yeah, like, depending how long they have been together. Karmic, you could kind of see it as karmic if, like, there is this, like, sort of deception as to why they're here, if that makes sense. It's a relationship of spiritual evolution, and they're a team in a business. So we're seeing, again, like, the work element. So now it's time for Venus. We have Gracie's Venus in Leo and Paul's Venus in Pisces. They are generous with each other, and they are hopeless romantics. Paul doesn't give Gracie the devotion she wants. I feel like this will be emotionally, because we've seen that she seems to desire it. We haven't seen a whole lot of, like, Paul reciprocating it or giving that emotional nourishment and all of that. Gracie is flattered by Paul's dependency. I feel like they are on the younger side. I feel like I don't want to, like, make assumptions. Just based off Gracie's behavior, I wouldn't be shocked if this was, like, her first serious relationship, because she seems to be quite, like, open with giving help and everything. Like, it seems like it's, to me, like, I'm seeing, like, a sheltered person, like, getting into a relationship, and they're so giving and everything, when it's, like, the reality is, it's, you're in Hollywood, you're the daughter of J.J. Abrams, you kind of have to be a bit more careful in a way. Gracie wants Paul to be more honest, and Paul gets easily hurt by Gracie. In what way, though? Because I don't think we've seen anything in terms of, like, harm or anything, unless I'm already forgetting it. Paul's Venus overlaid in Gracie's 4th house. Paul feels the need to protect himself from Gracie, and Paul has a strong attraction to Gracie, which it's interesting how we're seeing that Paul feels the need to protect himself from Gracie when I feel like it really should be the other way around. I think it just shows like the level of maturity, you could say, which we did see how Paul appreciates Gracie's mature thinking, but it seems like that is in terms of like her knowledge in the industry and everything. Like potentially she's a very mature like actress. I wonder if there was a situation where like maybe she was a child star, and in that weird way, like yes, she's mature and like kind of an adult, but in certain ways she's a bit more like stunted. If that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense, because it seems like in a practical sense she is mature. I feel like how she's handling this, it doesn't seem to be the most mature, and I'm worried for her. Like, it seems like this naive person, you know. Gracie senses Paul's hesitancy, and there's a strong magnetism. Uncertainty and tension characterizes the relationship. I guess that's a reason why this would be a bit more on the karmic side, potentially. Gracie's Venus opposite Paul's Mars. Gracie may become manipulative to try to get Paul to prove his feelings. Oh, this poor person, which you could see that's where Paul gets easily hurt by Gracie through her manipulation, but like I can't say I'm shocked. Like, to me this feels like her first relationship and she's trying to navigate it and all of that. It's not great, but like in a way it seems like this naive person trying to navigate something a bit more serious, if that makes sense. The desire for each other will always be there, and Gracie feels she gives more than she gets. I don't blame her. Gracie sees Paul as harsh, which we did see she views him as a bit more aggressive. I wonder if maybe just he has a bit more of like a brash, harsh personality. Paul sees Gracie as lacking substance. In certain ways, yeah, I agree. Paul may come onto Gracie too strong. Aha, so that, yeah, that's probably where maybe she sees him as a bit more aggressive. He's coming onto a bit more strong, a bit more of that brash personality potentially. So now it's time for Mars. We have Gracie's Mars in Sagittarius and Paul's Mars in Aquarius. They maintain their independence. It definitely seems to be that way, because we did see obviously like the long distance thing, they're separated from each other, but we also did see they tend to neglect their relationship. And also, honestly, like Paul seems to be quite independent here anyway. It seems it's one of those things to me where it's like you're still single even when you're in a relationship. It seems like he's prioritizing his career. And in a way, like we haven't seen anything like he's using Gracie, but like from reading between the lines, it seems to be that way. They are blunt with each other and they share humanitarian interests. Paul's Mars overlaid in Gracie's 3rd house. Paul is more blunt around Gracie. We're seeing again just now. Gracie may intimidate Paul, which we did see how like he puts her up on a pedestal, like he idolizes her. He feels that she's out of her league. So I assume in that way that he may feel intimidated by Gracie. Gracie is sensitive to Paul's intensity. So it seems like, yeah, they're very different personalities. Like, it seems like Gracie's this, like, you know, naive person in a way. Like, it's like a lamb. I don't know why. Like, in my head, it's like coming up with a lamb, and then Paul's like a lion. In a sense, like, that lion and the lamb analogy is coming to my head. Because, like, she seems to be a bit more, like, sensitive to, like, not really, you know, feels that he's coming on too strong. He's a bit more brash and harsh and everything. And then, yeah, Paul, he's coming off that way as well. Gracie's Mars sextile Paul's Uranus. They encourage each other's independence, which, yeah, we're seeing again, and it definitely seems to be that way. Which I don't think is a bad thing for, like, Gracie, because I don't want to say she needs out, but like, you know, she needs to keep herself, I think. I would be very worried if she lost herself in this relationship. It's an experimental relationship. Like, yeah, this seems to be a young people thing. Like, I don't know if they're together or not, but like, you know, yeah. You read between the lines. They both share humanitarian interests, and Paul makes Gracie anxious. Which, you know, it's nice that they share interests together, first of all. But yeah, we're seeing again, it seems like she's a bit more like anxious and like, why is she with him? Is my question, because it seems like she's getting used here essentially. And she's also very anxious here. Like, it's a bit concerning. Gracie's Mars conjunct Paul's Pluto. It's competitive and Paul brings depth. There are power struggles. In a sense, there are, because I feel like in their own way, they are powerful over the other. Like, you have Gracie that is more like, I would say, intellectually powerful and like, you know, has a bit more knowledge on Hollywood and everything, potentially has more connections, whereas Paul seems to be like more powerful in like the traditional masculine sense. Like, he's a bit more like, you know, harsher and everything and all of that, a bit more aggressive. So in that, like, you know, masculine, you know, the very traditional masculine energy, he seems to be more powerful in that way, if that makes sense. Their fights can be big and they're both likely to transform here. I mean, I really, like, we've seen that, well, I think we did see that literally that Paul may outgrow this relationship, which isn't shocking because he kind of has, in a way, in terms of like has become recently an uprising actor and all of that. And for Gracie, we haven't seen a lot, but I really hope she learns something from this at least. Paul's Mars square Gracie's Saturn. Paul tries to impress Gracie. My head is kind of going to like, because we've been seeing Paul seems to be quite intimidated by Gracie. He does seem to like her. It just seems like that intimidation, she, you know, out of the league and everything and all of that. But we also did see how, you know, he comes off on too strong to her. I wonder if it is that weird nervousness thing, like he's trying to impress her, but it just really fell flat and it just came off as very strong and everything. Gracie's standards are in conflict with Paul's efforts. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it still worked. It's just, I don't know how, you know, but it did. Gracie may try to control Paul as she thinks Paul is immature. In a way, again, I don't blame her. Like, she probably has a lot more inside knowledge to like acting and everything. I'm sure growing up with like a director like J.J. Abrams, like, you know, you're going to have a bit more insight to sort of things. I think see film a lot more intellectually. Not sure what Paul's background is, but I'm sure she has a bit of like a high head about her knowledge about acting in movies and everything. And in a way, you know, you're going to see Paul as immature if he doesn't share the same background, if that makes sense. So that was the final aspect, bringing us to the end of the reading. If you are still watching, please share your thoughts below. I'll be very curious to see what you guys have to say about this one, particularly if you're fans of these two and have a bit more insight, because this, I feel like, I know a short reading, but I feel like we got a lot out of that little reading, which sometimes doesn't happen, so it's nice. If you have made it this far, please consider subscribing for more. I post these readings weekly. And besides that, give this video a like and I will see you guys next time. Bye!